What is going on, everybody? BobbyFi with my man Eric Sheets-Haber. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Eric, you were down and you were telling me a little bit about a pre-show, but why don't you just, fill us in a little bit about how Virginia and what you had going on down there, and then we'll get into this monster NBA slate.
Yeah, UVA was great. It was like a father-son weekend with my son and his fraternity set up, and we went to a brewery with the whole crew, and then went to college bars, and we went to Saturday night. Saturday we had the tailgate before the UVA Notre Dame game, and then we had the UVA Notre Dame game, which is a little bit of a letdown because the quarterback from UVA got ruled out. They decided, it was, I don't know, it's kind of a weird decision, but I guess he was like kind of questionable. They decided that they'd rather rest him in the Notre Dame game and have him ready for the conference games that help win the conference that are coming up the next 2 days. I mean, it's like probably the Notre Dame game, if they had won that game, would have been probably the biggest win in like 20 years. Mm-hmm. And they were like a 5.5 point favorite with Armstrong if he was going to play. So it just seemed like kind of a weird decision. But I guess it's the right thing to do. But man, you only get so many opportunities to have like real huge legendary franchise wins,
right?
And program wins, and they basically just gave it to us freshmen. They had no chance. But anyway, and then Sunday morning we had a fraternity golf outing, which me and my son won with a combined 72, which we were styling there. And then some really just kind of good overall gambling stuff happened. I wanted to spend a little time on this. First of all, I did back one kid in the World Series of Poker. I used to back, as you guys know, like zillions. But this year, the first time in like a couple of years, I haven't had Eddie, and I had him in the main event, and he actually came in like the top 50th before busting. So that was good. But more to the point, I hope you guys have been, if you guys are interested, been following the Survivor videos, because, I've been not to toot my own horn, but I've been giving some really, really sharp advice to anybody who's willing to listen on there. And, we've been slowly picking up the pace during the season from just fundamentals to actually planning on paths and things like that. And for like 4 weeks ago, we were planning on a situation where we would be fading Pittsburgh this past week because they were going to be about 40% owned, which is just kind of the way it was going to plan out. Now, as the Survivor gods kind of shine their lights upon us, I wasn't expecting necessarily Ben to be ruled out 2 days before for COVID. And even luckier, this big, huge pool I'm in Vegas, how lucky am I that pool locked like an hour and a half before Big Ben announced that he was out. So all the Pittsburgh money got trapped. And I, as I've been running like pure all year with Survivor, Pittsburgh ended up not losing to Detroit. They tied Detroit, which is a loss for Survivor. So like 30% of the circuit pool, and this is a pool literally with $6 million in it. Okay. Wow. We're down, me and my partner, we have 2 entries and we're down to 170 people now. And it's real, yeah. And it's it's just getting real, Yeah. And we got crazy stuff coming up like Thanksgiving. And you have to pick one of the Thanksgiving Day games and a Sunday game. And then Christmas, you have to pick one of the Christmas Day games and a Sunday game.
Oh my God.
And it's a lot of game theory stuff going on because everybody's saving Dallas for Thanksgiving, but because everybody's saving them, they're going to be hugely owned, so you can get leverage against them. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So there's that one. I'm in 2 other pretty big Survivor pools. I'm in a couple of one on Nitrogen with a lot of 2+2 guys that I'm doing well in that also. And then if you guys want kind of an immediate sweat, I'm going to give that to you right now, actually. This is actually a pool that I'm in. It's an against the spread pool where and we talked about this on our other project, where you make 10 picks and you assign a point value to each pick, like 10, like 1 to 10, you pick 10 games. And if your number one pick comes in, you get 10 points or whatever it is. And they pay out for the course of the season, but they also pay weekly for how you do it during the week. And this is like my place going into the last game. So I'm Brantford FTW. I'm 7-2 for the week. And I am just behind in points Taja, who is also 7-2, but you'll see that he's got 45 and he's got 2 entries. He has 43 also. But I have San Francisco. These are my picks this past week. And I have San Francisco as a 10. So if they win, I get first. Okay, so I'm going to get 10 points.
Oh, wow.
Whereas he only has them he's got San Francisco 2, but he's got them for 2. And he's got this one for 3, So if San Francisco wins, I end up getting first place for the week, which is like 1,800, which is good. This is like a super sharp pool. This is like run by Mark Gregorich, who who actually chopped the big circa million last year with ODB. So he's been running this book for a while. So I need San Francisco for that. So a lot of not to mention that father-son golf tournament paid me $90 for first. So I'm sneaking up some good cashes across the gambling world right now, and it's making up for kind of a pedestrian NFL slate yesterday. You tell me that you did pretty well. Why don't you give me a quick summary of your NFL day, then we'll get into the NBA slate.
Yeah, sounds good. No, that's great stuff, man. I'm really impressed by all the Survivor stuff. I think it's really fascinating, especially as we're getting to this part of the year. But no, I had a really good NFL Sunday. I had, I was riding in the top. I was actually number 2 in the Wildcat for a long time, and then ended up, I think either finished 11th or 12th on that one. The single entry, like the $50, the big $50 single entry, the big $30 single entry. I ended up in the top 10 of those. I didn't really, it's most of my games were the afternoon games, but I didn't play that many lineups and I didn't play that much money. So I made a little more than 6x my investment, which is pretty great.
That's crazy
day. Especially because it's been kind of a not a great NFL season for me so far. So it was just nice to have a good day and hopefully heating up at the right time. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Again, I always wish you could have done certain things better, but me and Rody gave away a couple of things on the show that were good. And we talked about the Stevenson thing being suspect for the Patriots because everybody thought he was going to be owned. Then we realized afterwards, okay, well, he's not going to be owned. And so playing that kid who I believe
he's the guy, Stevenson. He's the guy that's
Stevenson. Yeah.
Okay.
And then and McCaffrey was our other big, where we loved McCaffrey. McCaffrey could have put up 100 million points in that game. I mean, they had Cam Newton at the goal line. So it took McCaffrey's touchdown upside a little bit. And Cam had the 2 touchdowns on the goal line when they brought him in, which welcome back to Carolina and all that. But we had some nice plays, and my pick of the day did really well. I didn't end up making the bet, but I did say it on the show that my favorite bet was Carolina to actually beat. They were 10-point underdogs. I had them. I thought they were going to win the game outright, and they sure enough they did. So hopefully you can take care of business tonight. Even though I'm always, I don't want to root against my Rams, but if it does go your way, I'm happy for you. And
sounds good.
Let's get into the NBA slate.
Dude, let's get the Rams win but not cover. It's even better. How about that?
There you go.
Everybody wins.
Works for me.
All right, so let's get into the NBA slate. I think we'll go game by game. We'll start off with a brutal total game, right? Boston, Cleveland. Is it even over 200? I'm not even sure, but
it's actually right at 200.
Yeah, there are, just so you guys know. Again, this ended up being long, even though it's a long slate. I hated to do that big intro. Whatever. I've been away for a couple of days. We can talk for a little bit. Yeah. If you guys want to check up on the premium tools up on the top, if you guys are premium members, our optimizers are starting to populate up there, so you can already start using them. And they're good, and you can either put your own projection up or access mine, and just to springboard into that. I mean, I did put early projections up as of now, and there's a lot of injury news that I assume certain things that are probably incorrect. So we'll just take all of it with a grain of salt. But with Boston and Cleveland, I don't really have too big of a population from that game in my list here right now, as far as good plays. I mean, the closest thing I have is maybe, I shouldn't say it. So Cedi Osman as a value play is probably like my 15th best value play. So normally that's pretty bad. And as far as spend ups go, I really don't have all that much, except I wonder if we're supposed to play Jared Allen. He's not really rating that well, but I have this weird feeling that he's in play. Anyway, yeah, I mean, he's like 3% owned, and I don't know. So for me, I'm going to take a look at him as a GPP play, and maybe Cedi Osman is kind of a bad value play. But for me, it's probably Cedi or nothing. I mean, Jared Allen or nothing.
I actually love Ricky Rubio.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because I think that, so he shot as poorly as he can shoot the ball in the last game. Without Garland, he really should be, without Sexton, he should really be a 7K player. And, he put up 35 fantasy points the last game, shooting 4 of 17 from the field. The minutes have been pretty secure. They blew out Detroit, so that's why he's sort of a more pedestrian performance. We haven't seen the 40-plus game. This feels like a good spot for him to get 40-plus. I don't think he's going to keep shooting the ball this poorly. And I think he's actually, by the end of the day, he and Jared Allen, especially he, will be popular. Okay. I think he might not show up that way right now, but he's certainly going to be popular by the end of the day, in my opinion. Rubio, Cedi Osman is fine. I think there's better value, and I think you're going to want to wait. We talk about it from a game theory angle. Like in the Toronto-Portland game, which is later on, this is 10 Eastern, you have Van Vliet, Precious, Boucher, and most importantly, Lillard, all questionable. So there's a lot happening. The Lakers also on a back-to-back. Who knows what's going to happen there? You also have the minimum cost THT in that game, Taylor Norton Tucker, and it's going to be hard to not want to have some pieces of that. So I do think there's a value in trying to delay, but most of the games are, in the first hour. But even we've just seen so many things happen after lock. So I'm trying not to get too involved in this one. There's nothing wrong with playing Tatum. Every time Brown is out, Tatum should be one of the guys you're considering spending up on. I just didn't find myself getting to him today, and I didn't find myself getting to Schroeder on DraftKings. But I do like Schroeder on FanDuel. And there is one other. Sorry, I guess I do like a couple more things than I thought. If this game was later, Marcus Smart is 5,400. One of my biggest last 2v2 swaps cost me from a really, really deep cash on Friday night. And that was Marcus Smart was one of those things. I mean, the game went into overtime and all that, but he had 38 in regulation. He's cheap enough to where I think you can play him. I mean, he made 0 shots in the last game. He put up 25 fantasy points, got 5X with 0 shots. So I don't mind if you want to take Marcus Smart. People will play Josh Richardson. I'm not going to do that probably, but I do think Marcus Smart is probably my highest level of interest on the Boston side.
Yeah, just watch for watch for Al Horford, whether he plays or not. If he doesn't play, Robert Williams becomes more palatable.
Mm-hmm. The Allen Rubio THT the Rubio and Allen thing is I probably will end up with one of those guys. And if Horford's out, it even boosted up a little bit higher because as good as I like Williams, I think that you're going to get, there's more chances for offensive boards. They get a little smaller. And the last guy I'm going to say, I'm not going to play him probably, but I'm not going to fault anyone for playing Evan Mobley every day. As I said, this guy is going to be one of the best 5 players in the NBA in the next 2 years, and he's playing terrific. His price is a little higher maybe than people would say, but he's putting up 40 every game, or near 40 every game. So, all right, Sacramento, Detroit. You want to start us off?
Yeah, I think Sacramento is probably healthy at this point, and I don't think I'm getting to much of it. Detroit is, I guess, mildly interesting because what's his name? Kelly Olynyk's out for I guess a while now, and Isaiah Stewart. As far as that's concerned, I mean, he's probably cheap. He's probably a better play on FanDuel, but he's good. But the real play continues to be Cade Cunningham. I believe he's 5,500. He's gonna, and he's been performing well enough without making the shot pretty much. So I feel as though, you were on him obviously right at the beginning. But I think that if he's going to continue to play 32 to 35 minutes with the amount of usage and trust they're giving him, I mean, he's a $7K player in a $5,500 price tag, so I feel as though you got to just keep playing him. So he, for me, would be the major priority in this game. And only because the position do I think that Stewart might not necessarily have to be played, obviously, because you never have to play center with a zillion options. But I do think Cade Cunningham's a somebody that's a pretty big priority.
Yeah, I agree 100% about Cunningham. I really like him. The only thing that's killing his action is that, and I thought Killian Hayes was going to be another year till we'd start seeing the good Killian Hayes, and I think this guy's going to be really good. I think this is going to be a really good backcourt. But his assist numbers being where they are, I mean, Killian Hayes has put up 32 and 40 in the last 2 games, and he's 4,500 also. But he's sort of taking away a little bit of the upside from Cunningham. I don't think it's going to continue. I'm going to play Cunningham. Like I said, I'm just going to keep riding it. I'll take my occasional 24s and 20s that suck and you don't feel great about it. They got blown out of that Cleveland game, even though he didn't, he still played 31 minutes, which is encouraging. It wasn't like it was just not a competitive game, and it just wasn't going his way. Jeremy Grant was taking all the shots. But I do like Cunningham, and I think Killian Hayes is in play too. This is a good pace matchup for them. And, it's a pace up spot for Detroit. So I think this is a good spot to try and take a shot with him. I would just say, though, if Halliburton was out, I would like him better. Sacramento's defense is so much better, and their team is so much better when Halliburton plays. But they, would open up a ton of things. It was opening up a ton of things when he was out before, and people weren't really catching on to it. But I think Cunningham and or Hayes are very viable. And I can't get to anybody on Sacramento. I also think, like you said, Stewart's interesting. You could make an argument for Rashawn Holmes. I just don't think I'm going to do it. Same thing with Harrison Barnes. I just think there's better plays as we go on.
Yep.
All right. New Orleans and Washington.
So for me, there's a couple of things that are standing out in this game. First of all, with Ingram, I presume now back. I say that with a question mark. I feel as though, I'm looking as though none of the New Orleans guys are much in play anymore. That's at least what I'm looking at first glance. But what is in play, I imagine, is Washington guys without Beal, and I'll tell you, this has been you're the whisperer, so I'll ask you. But the guy who stands out for me is Aaron Holiday at 3,500. If he starts, if he starts and gets his 30 whatever minutes he gets. I mean, he's we have not different views. Maybe I'm unlucky. Whenever I play him, he plays 34 minutes and stands in the corner and doesn't do anything. But when you play him, he does better somehow. But if he's going to start at 3,500 with no Beal, I think you just kind of have to play him, or at least consider it. And then you have NATO, who, I mean, he's only 3,300, and right now he's not projecting all that well. I don't exactly know why. We used to play him every time. I don't know. I'll continue to watch projections on him, but I think he's in play. Other guys in Washington, I guess maybe that's it. Gafford. Kuzma play? I don't know. The guy who's standing out for me right now is Holiday. What do you like in this game?
I think Kuzma and Dinwiddie are going to be the chalk on the slate.
But Dinwiddie, I forgot about that. Yeah.
When Kuzma's chalky, I don't mind just fading him in general. I think there's a really good chance that one of these guys puts up a good game. New Orleans doesn't play defense. They play fast. Washington does play defense. This game, I'm shocked to see, even without Beal, that they're only a 4.5 point favorite here. That's another bet I would consider making. Washington has been really, really good this season, and they're playing good team basketball. This is the kind of game I could see Montrezl Harrell having a big game as well. I'm probably not going to get there at his price. I mean, what is his? I think he has a crazy price difference between the sites. Yeah, he's 8K on FanDuel and he's 6,500 on DraftKings. I like I think I would lean Holiday is my first thought, but then when you really think about it, we've done this with Neto before. So I actually kind of like the idea of Neto coming off the bench, a bench that doesn't really have true natural scorers. So he's going to have to, he'll play with Dinwiddie will be on the court, some with him, Kuzma will be, but not both at the same time. So I think that there's a really good opportunity for those guys. And I'm looking at this for more value because I'm going to try and spend up on some guys later. But I really like there's nothing wrong. If you're playing cash games, I think you would consider Dinwiddie especially, but then Kuzma right after him. I would completely get on board with that, but I'm not probably going to go that route. KCP has been really good this year. Actually, he's playing, he's shooting the ball more, but I'm not going to pay 4,100 for him. I think it's going to be Holiday or NATO for me in this game. And I know this sounds like a really, really thin play. It probably is too thin for this slate. I like this kid, Herbert Jones, and he's starting to get more and more minutes and consistently producing like 6X. He's been, over 20 fantasy points the last 3 games. He put up 27 in the last one. He's 3,600. But I think that with everybody sort of starting to come back for New Orleans, I'm probably just going to focus on the Washington side of it, and it's going to be Holiday, Neto. That's pretty much all I've got now, and just keep an eye out for the starting lineup, like you said before.
Well, one thing I want to add before we go into the next game that we've added to the sheets. Well, the reason why I added it is because Bobby wanted to include it in the optimizer that Evan's working on. Is I didn't know as if I was going to be able to do it. I needed to make sure the projection systems all fed this in, but I was able to actually get a minutes column in to the sheets, which basically represent the entire industry's minutes projections, which I think is important because even though like the minutes is part of what's used to make projections anyway, so you're really double looking, I think it is important to see what the projections are being based on. Like if you're looking at a projection, well, let's say I'm just looking at Jokic, right? And they're projecting for 53 fantasy points based on a 32.6 minute projection. If you feel there's upside from that minutes projection, then you can, play him in GPP, right? Because then the fantasy points have upside. Where as opposed to, let's say that you think that Bam, he has a 34.5%, 34.6 minutes projection. If you think there's just downside from that, maybe you don't want to play. So I think it is an important thing to look at least, to visualize, to see what the projections are based on, what these minutes are, what they're expecting to play, to figure out whether there's upside from that or not. So that is in there right now, and you could use that as you wish. Mm-hmm. So with respect to the next game, Orlando, Atlanta, here you have actually one play that really just super duper stands out on one site and is only kind of just okay on another site, and that would be Clint Capela. Clint Capela is extremely cheap on FanDuel, and he's going to be popular as a result. But at 60 whatever 100 over there, he's very, very strong. Now, yes, it's on a back-to-back, but they didn't kill him, and this is Bob. You're the basketball guy. I mean, this seems to be the team that you'd want to put a big in against, right? If you got both Wendell Carter Jr. and Bob on the court. So if Capela can handle it, I think it's a good spot for him. So on FanDuel, he's really kind of standing out for me. On DraftKings, boy, these Trae Young plays at sub 10% ownership are always seem kind of tempting, So I'm continuing to, and then from a basketball perspective, I just have this idea of like playing the Trae to Capela, the pick and roll thing. So maybe play two of those. Maybe that makes some sense. I don't really like John Collins as much tonight. So for me, it's just for Atlanta side, at least first flip would be just the main guys. And it's hard to deny the price of some of these value guys. Like Herter is 3,500, 3,800 on DraftKings. I mean, that's pretty freaking cheap. And this is not really my cup of tea, but even Danilo's 3,200. I don't know. So those two value guys from Atlanta. Jalen Suggs, 4K from Orlando. He'd be my top Orlando guy, I guess. And that's where I am there.
Yeah. I think there's a couple interesting plays in this game. So keep an eye out. Atlanta, had they not gotten off, they've been off to a terrible start this season, and they've had a huge, the conference final rematch yesterday, and Trae went absolutely ballistic. He made 8 threes in the first half. And I think that was like their get up emotional game. The only problem is, so I would naturally expect someone to rest. It's probably going to be Danilo, which is going to make Herter a better play probably. And the guy we didn't mention is, that also has a value that it could sneak in and be the better play than Herter, depending on how things shake out, is Reddish if there's no Danilo.
Okay.
But the Danilo, I would imagine on a back-to-back would be considered. And they've had a lot of guys questionable lately. So it kind of feels like they might sit somebody, but they also need to win games because they're under 500 right now. So I like Capela, assuming that he plays. If Jalen Suggs doesn't play, I'm probably going to take some shots with Terence Ross and Franz Wagner, maybe even RJ Hampton. One of those three at least. I think the price on Wagner is fair. I don't love it. It's just 4,700 is mildly interesting to me. But Terence Ross, I mean, he played 31 minutes in the last game. And I think it was I believe Suggs might have been out that one. If we really think he's got 30 plus minute upside, he can shoot himself into any game. He's 3,600 and can put up 30 fantasy points. Maybe a long shot play, but he is in my pool of these cheapos. And I'd take him versus Herter. I mean, Herter is a better basketball player, more consistently gets the minutes and everything. But in general, they're sort of the same in that they're for fantasy, that they're both going to be shooting reliant. And Terence Ross will probably have to do a little more offensively than Herter is going to be asked to do. So I kind of like the Herter, the Ross pivot off of Herter. But I think those are my favorite plays in this game. And then Capela, I like on both sides. I think he's totally reasonable on DraftKings at 7K. Don't love it in general with the back-to-backs, but he's starting to look like better and better. And I think he's a really solid play. I don't think I can play Trae Young coming off of that monster performance yesterday. But I do think aware of that. Yeah. It's viable. I mean, he's still putting up numbers even when he hasn't. And what's also amazing, and I'm going to give a little credit to him, like he made 8 threes in the first half, and I think he only took like 1 or 2 in the second half. He didn't go out there to try and break the record for threes, which is something that in the old Trae seems like he would have tried to do. But he's reasonable. I mean, if you want to take, he's one of the spend ups you can consider. I would have him and Tatum rated very similarly. But I do sort of like this game, but I think mostly I'm going to be using it for value. I'm really curious to see who Atlanta rests, if anyone, on the back-to-back.
New York, Indiana, I don't have anybody even in my player pool that I'm willing to play. So why don't you, if you have anything that you like in that game?
It feels thin, but I've got a couple guys here. Evan Fournier, I understand how bad he's been. He's 46. He's 40. What is he? 4,600.
Yeah.
it's a good matchup against a bad Indiana defense. I guess you could make the same argument for Derrick Rose, who might only play 15 minutes, but he also might end up playing 30 minutes. So you just don't know which side you're going to get from him. So I'm open to that one. That was my other big mistake on Friday. I called it on the live show sheets and I said, Kemba's going back to Charlotte and no one's playing him and he's 5K. Now he's 5,400. Wow. But he didn't have the game quite that he thought, but he had 26 at the end of the first quarter, 26 fantasy points at the end of the first quarter. So we were just like, oh my God, this is, everybody's like, did you play him? Did you play him? And I'm like, I only played him in one of my long shot ones and that was it. But I think that, and I even think that RJ Barrett's price is just kind of getting to be silly, but he hasn't been producing at all. So maybe it's not silly. It's just a guy who I've got on my list right now. Probably skip the Fournier and maybe go with more of the RJ Barrett. Or Kemba's going to occasionally just have monster games out of the blue at home. He's a New York, the New York thing going back to when he was at Connecticut. And then I don't really want to play anybody on Indy against this defense, but if no one is going to play Karis LeVert, I will take some shots on the guy who, again, is just look at the massive usage rate. Every game, last game was his lowest usage of the season with 24%. He's been in the 40s in some games. He's at 35. It's just a question of minutes. So I probably am not going to play anybody on Indiana, but I did want to throw that out there and keep an eye on whether Chris Duarte plays, because that could, if Chris Duarte is out, then I think you could talk more. I could probably talk myself into playing some LeVert and just go for that ceiling game, or even Sabonis, because I think Sabonis, part of the reason why you're not seeing Sabonis go crazy, and as you were astutely pointed out earlier in the year, that they're not using him the same to run the offense through him like they have in the past, and that partially is due to Duarte and LeVert. So if Duarte's out, maybe it opens up a little bit for him, and he's only 8,800 for him. That seems like a fair price, but yeah, mostly going to be just one of these Knicks value plays. And one last guy, I don't know if I'm going to end up here, but there is going to be a slate where Mitchell Robinson just goes completely nuts at 4K. You don't have any Noel there. You do have Taj Gibson minutes, who's minimum, and people might even play Taj Gibson. I think this would be a spot where I could see Mitch Robinson playing, he's projected to play 24 minutes. I could see him playing 28, maybe 30 minutes, basically until he fouls out, because that's the big front line. They could actually play Taj. You could even use Randall as somewhat of a 3 against this team in some ways. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but I do think Mitch Robinson is mildly interesting. Bunch of mildly interesting guys. Anyway, we can move on to Denver, Dallas.
Yeah, I did say that Jason Kidd or not, Luka was going to get 80 pretty soon, and it was just on a day on a Friday night when no one's playing, and I'm out on my way. You know what I mean? There you go. Perfect game to do it. Just some rando game against freaking at San Antonio. You know what I mean? It's just there it is.
KP got there too at the same game. That was all the winning lineups had Luka and KP.
What's this line score? 32 points, 15 assists, 12 rebounds, 2 steals. You know what I mean? Like that's there you go. So Luka rates to be a good play. Jokic rates to be, for me, the top play as far as spend ups go. I actually have had some luck playing the two of them together against each other before. I don't exactly remember when, but it was last year, one of the times they played. I do think it needed overtime to get there, but it is definitely a lot to spend on a stack like that. But those would be, I think, the only guys I like in this game. Now, I think that what's his name might be questionable. Is Barton questionable somehow?
Barton is questionable.
If he's out, then with Michael Porter Jr. still out, we really have to consider all those crapolas, right? We got to really consider all that stuff from the Denver side that we don't want to play, right? I'd rather not speculate on that unless he does in fact get ruled out. So for now, Jokic probably I guess my top play on the slate for now as far as spend ups go, and Luka continues to have 80-point upside. He just does. Tonight, who knows? But I think 10% of the time he makes 80.
Mm-hmm. And I actually think that this could be a kind of situation for Jokic too, especially if Barton's out. Right. Who else are you running your offense through? Right. The one thing I'm going to throw out here, because he's not going to be owned, is everybody was playing Aaron Gordon when all these guys, Jokic was out and all this stuff. And then he finally had his ceiling game in a game that they all
Did he
played.
really? He had a good game?
He put up 45 against Atlanta. If we lose Barton, I would consider him, even though it always doesn't, never feels great with Gordon. But then you really are taking, I think Barton being out along with Porter, who's already obviously out, would be more of a boost to him than Jokic being out was. So I would take a shot with Aaron Gordon if he's out. I do like Jokic a lot. It's an expensive price tag, but we're going to have some value, so we can do it. I like Luka on the other side, but I think I prefer Kristaps. 7K just feels very reasonable. I feel like he's getting a ton of shots up this year. Put up 22 shots in the last game, 16 the game before that. He's been fairly efficient. The rebound numbers are better than they have been in previous seasons. Not really any assists or anything created like that, but he can always block shots and get steals and things like that. So I think Kristaps is interesting at 7K. So I do have KP as my favorite play in this game, but as a spend up, I have Luka and what's that? Luka and why can't I think of his name all of a sudden? Jokic as two of the best spend ups. The question is are we maybe better spending up? Almost, you're just not all the way to that level playing a guy like Tatum or something. Is that just as good of a play? That's the only thing I would consider.
I'll tell you, DraftKings really pulled a 3-card Monty with everybody with the Aaron Gordon. So they put him in at 4,900. He played 36 minutes and busted, right? So to reward everybody, you don't think they moved him up 300, okay? But that was a game where everybody was out and everybody played him and he busted. And then after busting twice in a row, they moved him up in price 300. Nobody played him and he smashed, right?
Yep.
So then off of that smash performance, they dropped him in price, saying, "Ooh, come and get it," and then he busted.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yep. No, absolutely.
How do they know? All right, so
Houston.
Yep, ready to move on. Houston, right. Memphis. Wow, they really did it. They made Ja 10K.
Yep.
Right on the number. And how I feel about that. That's going to make him a little lower owned than he could be otherwise if he was 9,900. Yep. And he's under 10%. And it seems like such a bizarre thing to pay, but I think it's a good play. That's all. I think it's a good GPP play. And there you go. I think that Christian Wood is a good play on the other side from Houston. It's a really big slate, so I don't want to go too crazy with these guys, but I think that they're both going to be really low owned. I think they're decent plays.
Yeah, if I had any belief that this game could stay close, I would be interested in Wood, especially because as good of a defender as Adams is, he doesn't like to come out either to the 3-point line. So it's going to be kind of a weird situation. And by the way, Steven Adams, right when we thought we were onto this track, they want to start playing Jaren Jackson more. Then he goes and has a stealing game, of course, against his former team.
Did he really?
He puts up 41, the other night against New Orleans, against Joe Val and the guys who were traded for each other, which just seems like if anybody thinks that narratives or whatever don't matter, this just happens too often. You know what I mean? Like even for everybody, even for guys who don't shoot the ball. I think this is an interesting game, but I think you got to play an angle on this. My personal take is I think Memphis is going to absolutely massacre them. I think 11 is not enough. I think that 20 is where the line should be. I think Memphis will just absolutely wipe the floor with them. And one of Desmond Bane or DeAnthony Melton will probably put up 35 fantasy points. That's my take. I'm not probably, there's no reason I have to do it. So I may not, but I would just, I don't know which one to guess. And Kyle Anderson's taking up minutes too. But I do think Bane and Melton, who's been losing some minutes lately, I just could see a monster performance against this Houston team that just doesn't play defense whatsoever at all. They're so bad. One of those guys, but I think I would probably side with Bane if I had to choose anyone. He's played really well at blowouts in the past, and he can sort of be, they'll use him sometimes when Ja's off the court and to sort of initiate offense along with Melton with the second unit. You do get Dylan Brooks back, which is sort of mucking things up. But I'm not, I don't know. He did play 30 minutes. I don't know. I have some interest in Bane even with all that stuff. So that's what I've got here.
Well, I will say this, and this is kind of a 2-minute discussion where it could be a 2-hour discussion on wind conditions, not wind, but wind conditions. So you may have made an interesting point that like if I had any faith this game would stay close, I think Christian would be a good play. Mm-hmm. What you could also say is, if in fact this game is going to stay close, Christian Wood's going to just have to have a good game. So I think you could play Christian Wood based on that. That maybe it doesn't stay close, but if it does, he's probably going to have a really, really good game. But the thing is that. And I think about this a lot. is, let's say you were thinking of stacking. Let's say you were playing Ja or something like that. The reason why I don't think it's a good idea to play guys like in this situation where, the underdog, the guy, for them to, if one guy really smashes, then the game stays close, then you can play the other side, is that what happens is that Ja, if Christian Wood plays well enough to keep it close, Ja's probably going to need a median projection and not his own ceiling. Because if Ja had a ceiling, then probably the game wouldn't be close, right? So if you're going to overpay for Ja, if you think that's an overpay, then I don't think it really works to play Christian Wood, because if Ja was like underpriced, or if he was like a really, really good price, then I think that you can do that and play Christian Wood with Ja. But I think because Ja in and of himself might be kind of overpriced, then you wouldn't want to play Christian Wood on the side. For me, I'd be like, if I'm going to get a ceiling out of John Moran, maybe Christian Wood isn't going to factor in. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I think about that. So anyway, Bain, Melton, I didn't quite get to them yet, but I like the angle though on the blowout.
Yeah, I think that's what you said was really true. Like if the game does stay close, playing Christian Wood would certainly make a lot of sense. If you're going to take that angle. Phoenix and Minnesota, this is an interesting game because you have the highest total on the slate, and I don't think anyone really wants to play basically anyone in this game. It also is a little bit later, which is, it's 8, so you get the extra hour to buy some time.
Dude, I want to play people in this game.
Okay, well, no, and that's what I was gonna say. I have a little bit of interest. Unfortunately, I like a lot of centers on this slate. Mikal Bridges is cheap enough to where he's playable at 5K for sure. I just want to remind everybody, he just doesn't ever get there. No. But I actually think if you're going to pick game environments, Minnesota is the kind of environment where you could see them thriving. If there was no value starving, I would have gone Cam Johnson diving. I think JaVale McGee is a terrific play. I think people there's an impression that he has no ceiling. I mean, he put up 47 in the last game, which is maybe an outlier against Houston, but this is what Cat, leads fantasy points to other opposing centers. And JaVale McGee will probably, he matches up a lot better with Cat than Kaminsky does. So I like JaVale McGee, and I think that there's enough, he can get 24 to 26 minutes here. And I think he's a very solid play. And on the other side, I don't really like picking on Phoenix in general. Their defense has not been as good as it was last year this season. But I think I would play Towns here because of that same thing. Like JaVale can't play Cat, can't guard Cat. Cat, you get a $1,500 discount from the Jokic. And I think, they've been involved in some blowouts lately. I think Cat has really not had his monster game. And this is a game they're going to need him to go sort of crazy for them to win, I think. And I think this could be the chance to get, the 70 fantasy point game for Cat. That could be in the cards here tonight. So he is one of the guys who I am considering spending up and avoiding those other ones. Maybe you should play Tatum instead. Maybe you should play Trae Young. People could argue that, but I like the Cat complete no ownership here. I'm personally skipping the Booker and Paul thing. Would not surprise me if Booker put up 40 real life points tonight. Wouldn't surprise me if Paul had a triple double. I don't think that's the most likely outcome. So I am going to skip those guys. And I will play some McGee. And by the way, you can even play Crowder in this game. It's just a really good game environment for that mid tier. And so JaVale and Cat are my favorite plays, though.
Yeah, I got some others. Okay. If you don't like Cat, can I talk you into Naz Reid at nearly min cost?
I just feel like we're going to get better value. But
there's definitely better value.
That's my only thing. He's going to, because he's popping in the projections for sure.
Yeah.
I think by the time this game, everything settles with the slate, there's just going to be other guys who are like, that guy's 3,500 and he's starting to play 30 minutes. Najee might play 18, But go ahead. Sorry, Sheets.
Other guys from Minnesota, I can play Patrick Beverly at 4,100. Seems like a game that he'd kind of like to play against Chris Paul and Devin Booker. Seems like that would be a good idea. And what's his name's been doing been healthier and doing his thing. D'Angelo Russell. If you are going to play someone like Chris Paul or Booker, whatever it is, I think like we said, if either one or both of Cat and Russell are going to have to probably play well. Although That's not necessarily true.
Edwards
it's
too.
possible that Edwards, drags Minnesota into the game. But in any case, I think Russell could be a good, 150 max, 5% owned guy, and he's always in play.
Yeah.
And yeah, and Phoenix, I agree with you, but with McGee, I think he's showing up as actually a decent play.
Mm-hmm.
I also see him getting like 20%. Not 20%. That's 20% minutes. Sorry. Now see what I'm doing? So I have 21 minutes, and I'm like, oh, does that mean he's 21% on? So I'm reading the wrong columns. And I would still not count out what's his name, Kaminsky, as sharing that role. And if it's one of those things where somehow like the entire universe gets on McGee again, I would have no problem going back to Kaminsky. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I should have mentioned Russell. I do think that his price is too low. And by the way, no one's going to play Edwards, and Edwards might put up 25 fantasy points here, but we saw the real ceiling the other night. I mean, that was an insane game that he had against Golden State. He had 48 real points. He'll chuck it, man, and he'll give you a chance every time. But I think
what did he get fantasy wise? Did he get 70?
Yeah, I think he had 68 and a half. I think it was something like that, 67 and a half. But I think I prefer Russell a little bit. It feels like a safer play, but I think that there's just always that upside with Edwards. I just don't want to pick on Phoenix's defense as much. I still have that built in my head that they're better than they've shown so far this season. So, all right, the next one is a big weird one. You want to start it off?
Yeah, I can't imagine them rushing Butler back to play.
I agree.
But I'll tell you that if they do, I mean, I probably wouldn't mind playing him. But I'm going to presume he's out for the time. Well, that's not true. I'm going to presume he's in. I still think Bam is just way too cheap at 8,100, and we're going to dispense with the blowout risk in a set for a few minutes. Bam at 8,100. If Butler is out, I think that Hero at 36 minutes he's going to play.
Yep.
Is going to remain, and his usage is really, really strong. I think he's going to remain a good play. I got there with what's his name the other day, but it wasn't fun for a while. Duncan Robinson, is that his name?
Duncan Robinson.
Yeah, he couldn't. Of all people, he couldn't make a shot. But
Right.
but he got there on like rebounds and assists. He got there like on in a weird way, but he did get there. But if Butler plays, Bam, Butler, I don't think I could do Hero if Butler's in. And then on the OKC side, not much. Let me just see if anybody stands out. Oh, is Giddey on OKC?
Yeah, but
no, I really not much. I don't have much on the OKC side.
Yeah, I don't want anything from OKC. I do like the Bam idea. Again, just a reminder to everybody, there's a lot of good center plays out there today. But I do think Bam is one of the better ones, whether Butler plays or not. And I actually do think it's less likely that they would rush Butler for this game.
Yeah,
it just doesn't make sense to me. That one really hurt too. The Butler play the other night. I had him against the Lakers, and he got hurt in the first quarter. And I had a lineup that would have cashed really deep if he put up like just 35 fantasy points, which he was definitely going to do. It would be really surprising if he didn't. But anyway, Lowry and Bam are my interest in this game, and that's pretty much where it ends. Even without Butler, I have interest in Hero, but I don't think it's like an automatic. And I think Duncan Robinson is just, you can always play him. He's at a price no one will play him now. Maybe it's worth taking a shot. He's going to start hitting some of these threes at some point, and he did in the last game finally, and he can put up 40 if he does. But I just don't think I'm going to do it.
Portland, Toronto. You mentioned the injury possibilities there. Lillard and Van Vliet both questionable. With Lillard out yesterday or the day before, I forget which one it was. McCollum and Anthony Simons both garnered a lot of ownership, and they will continue to do so if Lillard is out. Anthony Simons at 3,500 is just, he was doing better anyway before Lillard was out. If Lillard remains out, he's going to be a strong play. And even though maybe CJ McConnell hasn't smashed, I guess he still has to be considered a strong play. The other one, I mean, it's kind of like, I won't say sneaky, but it's like not going back to Toronto, but by Norman Powell against his old team, that could be fun.
They trade on the other side. They were traded in the same trade for each other.
Yeah. That he was traded for whom?
Gary Trent, they were part of the same thing.
Okay. Yeah, and so that could be fun if Lillard's out. That's really all I got. I got Simons if Lillard is out. I have, and not a whole lot. What do you like here?
I'm going to be all over these late games just because I think you're buying yourself something. Also, I'm going to be driving. I have to figure out all my stuff today, but I think this is really logical. Like, I think there's a really good, reasonable chance that Lillard may sit. Either way, whether he sits or not, I'm going to have McCollum in my main lineups. Like,
he's only 7,700, right?
He's 7,700, and I like that. You know, the way that Toronto plays defense. These are a really good basketball team, but 70. And by the way, McCollum, it looks so cheap, but he really hasn't been getting there. Even without Dame in the game, he didn't get there. But I do like him here, and I think I think Simons. It's interesting with him because I think he's going to play minutes either way, and it's probably worth taking that risk if we really are questioning about Lillard after the early games, because if there's legit like 10x is not his floor, but like it's a really reasonable number for him to get. Like It's not his median necessarily, but it's close to it. I think 30 is like right where I would expect him, somewhere in that range, and he's 3,500. So why wouldn't I take that shot? I also love Norman Powell here. I think that this is a terrific play. It's a good price for him. So I have sort of interest in all of these guys. And look, if you have to make some pivots or whatever, and you have to switch over and play a guy like Covington, if Lillard's in, and you can use Covington as a filler. It's not a guy you want to start off targeting, but you're going to have switchable options in these late games. So I'm going to be trying to heavy stack the late games, just using certain pieces I like in the early ones. So that's what my plan is to have McCollum, to have Powell, to have Simons in my lineup. And then on the Toronto side, what's going to happen is that, like, if anybody's out, especially if it's Van Vliet for Toronto, you're going to get an incredible value on OG Anunoby, especially if Precious and Boucher are also out.
Scotty
you're going to
Barnes
get value.
too.
Yeah, was that?
And Scotty Barnes.
Scotty Barnes, Gary Trent, all of those guys. Trent less so because he doesn't he doesn't need to do as much. He's a really good real life player who's going to get steals. But he does keep getting there. You know what I mean? Pretty consistently.
And he's going back to Portland, as you said.
Yeah, going back. So I can get on board with sort of going after this game. There's one last play that you can do, though, if you want to get creative here, and that's Siakam. This is a really, really good matchup for Siakam.
I didn't even know he was back.
Yeah, and he put up 54 in the last game, by the way, against another really good match against Detroit. But if you have no Van Vliet, no Achua, and no Boucher, I actually think Siakam would become my preferred play. So I want to stack these up. I want at least 5 guys in these late games, and I want to try and figure out what I have to do when I find out who's playing, because I do think these are legitimate questionables, and I'm going to try and take advantage of it. I think that's the way I want to play this slate, and it's just been so right for so much of the season. And there's going to be some guys in the next game I absolutely love. So we'll get into that one, I guess.
Yeah. So probably the best value on the slate, and is going to be owned as such, is going to be Taylor Horton Tucker. Like right now, I have him at like 8x projection. I mean, he's 3K in starting. It's just even if he isn't starting, whatever.
If he plays terrible, he's going to get there probably.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna stumble into the points one way or the other. So he's kind of a lock. I mean, whatever. I probably would end up locking him. I think. He's also in a late game. I mean, it's all that stuff that you want. So there's him, and I guess Anthony Davis is a good play with with LeBron remaining out. So Tucker and Davis on that side, and then there's all kinds of stuff you can do on the other side. So Levine at 8,100 certainly makes a lot of sense. But then there's another, like, I have my second top value play so far is Alex Caruso at 4K flat. So it's Caruso, Levine, Tony Bradley remains 3,500. I guess what's his name still out.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could just I like your idea, man. Just kind of chill out in the early games if you can help it, and go after the Toronto, Portland, and you can get Davis and Levine or Levine or both of them, and Tucker makes it all work. And yeah, I kind of like all this.
Yeah, this is a really wild spot. So if you want to talk about narrative things, the Bulls have every narrative back, like, going for them. So you got Caruso back in LA, our favorite son, the most popular player in Chicago right now, the most popular player since Jordan in Chicago. And by the way, even the Laker fans will tell you this. I think Caruso was more beloved as a Laker than LeBron is. I really do. People love him here. What that means, I don't necessarily know. But there's a narrative there. DeMar DeRozan has always made it very, very clear how he's an LA guy. He idolized Kobe, grew up, all that stuff. So when he comes to LA, I always have my, I'm perked up. I mean, even when he plays the Clippers, he always goes off. Like he put up 50 in the last game against the Clippers. So he's got something going there. Levine is too cheap to be with no guy, with no, what's his name in the middle, Vucevic. You have Levine with huge upside. Also a UCLA guy coming back home. Like, you know what I mean? It's just interesting all the way down. Little Lonzo Ball, former,
right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, crazy, right?
It's just weird. It's like the whole thing, and I just want parts of all of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Lonzo is 5,700 on FanDuel, and that's probably a better site to play. And this is a great steal and block matchup for. I mean, look, we all know I've not been thrilled with the way he's looked so far this season, Westbrook, and they turn the ball over like crazy, and they get their shots blocked like crazy. Lonzo is a perfect guy to play in this kind of on FanDuel. He'll be very popular over there, but I would take some shots on him in DraftKings as well. If I have to rank them, I have DeRozan and Levine really close. I give Levine a little bit of the edge, but I think it's close. And then I have Caruso, but Caruso and Levine will probably be in my main line, like my first build. And then on the other side, of course, Taylor Horton Tucker, but I'm obsessed with Anthony Davis here. Who the hell are they going to put on Anthony Davis? One note to just Chicago real quick. Kobe White is supposed to be back and is going to muck things up a little bit. He's not going to play a ton of minutes, but he's going to muck up a little bit of the Caruso ceiling minutes. It's going to lock away a little bit of the shots from Levine and DeRozan and potentially Lonzo to some extent. It'll probably just be 18, 20 minutes, but he's a high usage guy when he's in. So just keep that in mind a little bit, why I'm tempering some of my expectations on Chicago, even though I'm very excited about playing them still. And then I'm going to play some Westbrook. If I'm going to have this much exposure to these late games, I can always switch it around or whatever. I can drop down to Davis, use Westbrook in your utility or something like that, and then switch it over to Davis or something. I'm going to have so many late guys and so many opportunities to do things that I'm just going to wait to see how it sort of plays out. It is worth noting that this is a back-to-back. This is Anthony Davis was the guy last night. It sort of seems like one of he or Westbrook goes off. Occasionally they both do without LeBron. And last night was a great matchup, especially for Davis. And the same is true tonight. I think he's got the better matchup. So I am siding with Davis slightly over Westbrook, but I will have, if I play 4 big lineups, Westbrook will be in at least one of them, maybe 2.
Well, what a fun late slate. You have a 2-game slate, the Toronto, Portland, and the Chicago, LA.
That's the whole slate. It's an 11-game slate. We did all that stuff we talked about. And I know I'm just going to filter in some of those guys to play with these guys. And I mean, this is going to be where I do all my. I
love it. But I hope you can live with it though. There will be no screenshot life for us for like a while.
Yep. That's fine with me.
I love those things where I have like one red and then like all like did not play yet. I love that.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll quickly go through my guys for the slate. The early guys that I'm interested in, and this is sort of an order of my, or the interest or whatever. Ricky Rubio, Cade Cunningham in the early games. One of Holiday or Neto, although I'm starting to, the more you look at these late situations, there's just going to be other opportunities as well. So you don't need to play those guys, but I think one of them, 7 or 8 X is their near minimum tag. Clint Capela, Porzingis, Cat, Bam. And then other than that, it's going to be McCollum, Powell, Simons, Caruso, Westbrook, Davis, THT, all these late guys. That's what I'm going to probably end up doing. And just filter in a few of the early guys that I like the most. And like I said, it's going to be the Holiday or Neto, Rubio or Cade, and maybe Capella or Cat.
Yeah, you got to watch from the Miami news. He was playing over there. Got to obviously watch the Portland news. But I totally agree with your outlook on the slate. I think everything should be weighted towards those late 2 games. Just kind of pick and choose from the earlies, but I would try to push as much back as possible.
Totally agree. All right, man. Anything else before we bounce?
No, we'll do a football one. Yep. And good luck, everybody.
I may not be around for live, guys, and I may put my lineups into Discord for today. By the way, Discord, we're going to start making premium as of December 1st, so just keep that in mind.
Oh, God bless you.
And we're gonna. I'm today just as a fun free thing that I usually put them up on the site, but I'm going to put up my actual early builds on the in the Discord today. So keep an eye out for that a little bit later. All right, guys. Good luck, everybody.
Send me another one, Bob.